Sarah Martinez walked through the glass doors of Henderson and Associates marketing agency on a gray Monday morning, her worn leather bag slung over her shoulder. At 35, she carried herself with an unusual stillness that most people mistook for shyness. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore a conservative navy blazer that had seen better days. Nothing about her appearance suggested the extraordinary life she had lived for over a decade. The receptionist, a young woman named Brittany with perfectly manicured nails and designer clothes, barely looked up from her phone. "You must be the new hire," she said with a dismissive glance. "Sarah something, right? The boss said you'd be starting today. Your cubicle is in the back corner." Sarah nodded quietly and followed Brittany's pointed finger toward a cramped workspace tucked away from the main floor activity. As she made her way through the office, conversations seemed to pause. Colleagues sized her up with quick, judgmental glances. Her simple clothes and lack of expensive accessories marked her as someone who probably couldn't afford the lifestyle that most employees here enjoyed. "Great, another charity case," whispered Jake Morrison, a junior account executive who drove a BMW his parents had bought him. His comment drew snickers from the small group gathered around the coffee machine. "I bet she got hired through some diversity program. Probably never worked anywhere that required actual skills." Sarah heard the comment but kept walking. She had learned long ago that people's first impressions rarely captured the full story. Setting down her bag at the assigned desk, she noticed how isolated the workspace was. The computer was outdated, the chair had a broken wheel, and the phone looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1990s. It was clear this wasn't where they put employees they expected great things from. Her supervisor, Monica Chen, appeared an hour later with a stack of files. Monica was in her early 40s, impeccably dressed, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who had climbed the corporate ladder through careful networking and strategic positioning. She looked at Sarah with barely concealed skepticism. "These are client files that need to be organized and digitized," Monica said, dropping the heavy stack on Sarah's desk. "It's pretty basic data entry work. I assume you can handle typing and filing?" The condescension in her voice was unmistakable. "Yes, I can manage that," Sarah replied calmly. "Good. We'll start you on simple tasks and see how you do. This industry moves fast, and not everyone can keep up with the pace." Monica's tone suggested she didn't expect Sarah to last long. "If you have questions, ask Brittany at reception. I'll check your progress at the end of the week." As Monica walked away, Sarah opened the first file. The work was indeed basic, but she approached it with the same methodical precision she had once applied to mission planning and tactical operations. While her colleagues assumed she was struggling with simple tasks, Sarah was actually analyzing the company's client relationships, marketing strategies, and operational inefficiencies with the sharp analytical mind that had once been used to assess hostile territories and plan complex operations. During lunch break, Sarah sat alone in the small employee kitchen, eating a sandwich she had packed from home. The conversation at the main table was loud and exclusive, filled with discussions about expensive restaurants, weekend trips to wine country, and complaints about their workload. Nobody invited her to join, and she didn't push for inclusion. "I heard the new girl used to work at some government office," said Amanda Walsh, the office gossip who seemed to know everyone's business. "Probably some boring desk job pushing papers around. Monica said she doesn't have any real marketing experience." "That explains the clothes," added Rachel Kim from Human Resources. "And, did you see her car? That old Honda in the parking lot has to be hers. I'm surprised it even runs." Sarah's Honda Civic was indeed old and bore the scars of many years of reliable service. What her colleagues didn't know was that the unassuming vehicle had been chosen specifically for its reliability and low profile. During her years in special operations, Sarah had learned that the best cover was often hiding in plain sight, and that lesson had carried over into civilian life. The afternoon brought more filing and data entry, tasks that Sarah completed with quiet efficiency. She noticed patterns in the client data that suggested missed opportunities and potential problems, but kept her observations to herself. Her years in the military had taught her the value of understanding a situation completely before speaking up. As 5 o'clock approached, the office began to empty. Colleagues gathered their designer bags and discussed dinner plans at trendy restaurants that cost more than Sarah's weekly grocery budget. Jake Morrison made sure his voice carried as he talked about the expensive gym membership his company had paid for. "It's amazing what a good personal trainer can do," he said loudly, flexing slightly for effect. Of course, not everyone can handle that level of physical challenge. It takes real dedication and mental toughness. His comment was clearly directed toward Sarah, who had been quietly packing up her simple bag. Several colleagues laughed at what they assumed was an obvious truth. The small, quiet woman in the corner certainly didn't look like someone who could handle serious physical challenges. Sarah looked up from her desk for just a moment, making eye contact with Jake. For the briefest instant, something flickered in her expression. It wasn't anger or hurt, but something deeper and more controlled. Jake felt an unexpected chill but dismissed it quickly, returning to his boastful conversation. Walking to her car that evening, Sarah reflected on her first day. The mockery and underestimation were nothing new. She had faced much worse during her years of service, when male colleagues had initially doubted her abilities before she proved herself in the field. The difference was that in the military, respect was earned through demonstrated competence under pressure. In this corporate environment, respect seemed to be tied to appearances and social status. As she drove home to her modest apartment, Sarah passed the expensive restaurants where her new colleagues were probably enjoying their evening meals. Her own dinner would be simple, prepared in the small kitchen of her one-bedroom apartment that was furnished with practical, inexpensive items. Most people would see her lifestyle as evidence of limited success or ambition. What they couldn't see was the discipline that shaped every aspect of her daily routine. The early morning runs that kept her in the kind of physical condition that had once been necessary for survival in hostile environments. The continued study of multiple languages that had once been crucial for international operations. The mental exercises that maintained the sharp focus and quick decision-making abilities that had made her exceptional in the field. Her apartment walls were bare except for a few simple photographs. None showed her in uniform or gave any hint of her military service. That part of her life was carefully compartmentalized, a chapter she had closed when she decided to transition to civilian life and try to build something normal and peaceful. But peaceful didn't mean passive, and normal didn't mean weak. As Sarah prepared her simple dinner and reviewed her notes from the day, she was already beginning to understand the dynamics of her new workplace. She saw the inefficiencies that cost the company money, the personality conflicts that reduced productivity, and the missed opportunities that better leadership could capitalize on. Her colleagues had spent the day looking down on her, assuming that her quiet demeanor and modest appearance indicated limited capability. They had no way of knowing that the woman they were dismissing had once led teams through some of the most challenging and dangerous situations imaginable. She had made life-and-death decisions under extreme pressure, coordinated complex operations across multiple time zones, and earned the respect of some of the most elite military personnel in the world. The irony wasn't lost on her. People who struggled with the basic challenges of office politics and client management were looking down on someone who had once been trusted with national security operations. But Sarah had learned patience during her years of service. She understood that respect had to be earned, and she was prepared to do whatever work was necessary to prove her value in this new environment. As she settled in for the evening with a book and a cup of tea, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Tomorrow would bring more condescension, more assumptions, and more opportunities to quietly demonstrate her capabilities. Her colleagues thought they knew who she was based on her first day, but they had only seen the surface. The real Sarah Martinez was still hidden beneath the careful civilian facade she had constructed. But circumstances had a way of revealing people's true nature, and Sarah suspected that her new workplace would eventually provide the kind of challenges that would strip away the pretenses and show everyone exactly what she was capable of. For now, she was content to let her colleagues maintain their assumptions. Underestimation, after all, could be a powerful tactical advantage when used correctly. And if there was one thing Sarah understood, it was how to use every advantage available to accomplish her mission. Her mission now was simply to build a successful civilian career and find her place in a world very different from the one she had known for 12 years. But the skills that had made her exceptional as a Navy SEAL hadn't disappeared. They were just waiting for the right moment to emerge. 3 weeks into her employment at Henderson and Associates, Sarah had settled into an uncomfortable routine of isolation and condescension. The initial novelty of having a new target for workplace gossip had worn off, but the underlying dismissive attitude toward her had only grown stronger. Her colleagues had convinced themselves that their first impressions were accurate, and they treated her accordingly. The morning started like many others, with Sarah arriving early to avoid the rush of employees who liked to make grand entrances with expensive coffee drinks and animated conversations about their social lives. She preferred the quiet office, where she could focus on her work without the constant undercurrent of judgment and exclusion. Monica appeared at her desk around 9:30, carrying a thick folder and wearing an expression of barely concealed irritation. "Sarah, we have a situation with the Blackstone Industries account," she said, dropping the folder heavily. "The previous account manager left some things in a mess, and we need someone to sort through this disaster before our meeting with them next week." Sarah opened the folder and immediately saw the scope of the problem. The account files were chaotic, with missing documentation, conflicting information about campaign performance, and what appeared to be several months of neglected client communications. It was exactly the kind of complex, high-pressure situation that most junior employees would find overwhelming. "This looks like it needs significant reorganization," Sarah said calmly, scanning through the documents. "How much time do I have?" "The client meeting is Monday," Monica replied. "Mr. Henderson is personally handling this account, so everything needs to be perfect. Honestly, I'm not sure this is the right project for someone with your limited experience. But everyone else is busy with more important work." The message was clear. Sarah was being given an impossible task that was likely to result in failure, providing perfect justification for any future decisions about her employment. Her colleagues probably expected her to panic, ask for help, or simply do a poor job that would confirm their low expectations. Instead, Sarah nodded calmly. "I understand. I'll have everything organized and ready for review by Friday afternoon." Monica looked surprised by the confident response but shrugged and walked away, already mentally preparing to explain to Mr. Henderson why the new employee hadn't been able to handle such an important assignment. As Sarah dove into the chaotic files, she applied the same systematic approach she had once used to organize complex intelligence reports and coordinate multi-phase operations. She created detailed spreadsheets, cross-referenced inconsistent information, identified patterns in the client's business needs, and developed a comprehensive overview of the account status that revealed both problems and opportunities. The work required her to stay late each evening, but Sarah approached it with the same focused intensity she had once brought to mission preparation. While her colleagues assumed she was struggling with basic tasks, she was actually conducting the kind of thorough analysis that revealed insights about the client's business that nobody else had noticed. By Wednesday, Jake Morrison had started making jokes about the lights in Sarah's corner still being on when he left each evening. "I guess some people need extra time to figure out simple tasks," he told his friends at the coffee machine. "It's kind of sad, really. She's probably panicking about disappointing the boss." Amanda Walsh joined in with her usual enthusiasm for gossip. "I heard Monica gave her the Blackstone mess. That account has been a nightmare for months. They're probably setting her up to fail so they can let her go without feeling guilty about it." "Makes sense," added Rachel from HR. "Sometimes you have to give people enough rope to hang themselves. At least this way they can say they gave her a chance." Sarah overheard these conversations but remained focused on her work. She had learned during her military service that people often revealed their own insecurities through their willingness to watch others fail. The energy they spent on gossip and speculation was energy she could put into actually solving problems. Thursday afternoon brought an unexpected development. Mr. Richard Henderson himself, the company's founder and president, stopped by Sarah's desk. He was a tall, imposing man in his early 60s who had built his marketing agency from nothing into a regional powerhouse. Employees typically only saw him during major presentations or company meetings. "Ms. Martinez," he said formally, "I understand you've been working on the Blackstone account." Sarah stood up, maintaining the respectful but confident posture she had learned during military briefings. "Yes, sir. I'm preparing a comprehensive overview of the account status and recommendations for moving forward. Henderson looked at the organized materials spread across her desk, noting the detailed charts, analysis documents, and systematic approach to the chaotic information she had been given. It was immediately clear that this wasn't the work of someone struggling with simple tasks. Monica mentioned that you might need additional time, Henderson said, watching Sarah's reaction carefully. I'll have everything ready for your review by tomorrow afternoon, as promised, Sarah replied. The account has some challenges, but there are also significant opportunities that haven't been fully explored. Henderson raised an eyebrow at her confident tone. Most junior employees were intimidated by direct contact with him, especially when discussing problematic accounts. But Sarah's demeanor suggested someone accustomed to briefing senior leadership under pressure. I'll look forward to your report, he said before walking away. The brief interaction didn't go unnoticed by Sarah's colleagues, who whispered among themselves about what Henderson's personal interest might mean. Some speculated that Sarah was about to be fired directly by the boss, while others wondered if she had somehow complained about her treatment. Friday afternoon arrived with Sarah putting the finishing touches on her comprehensive Blackstone account analysis. The document was thorough, professional, and revealed insights about the client's business that went far beyond simple account management. She had identified 3 major opportunities for campaign improvement, discovered billing discrepancies that had been costing both the agency and the client money, and developed a strategic plan that could potentially double the account's value. Monica arrived at 5 o'clock, expecting to find exactly the kind of incomplete, confused work that would justify her low expectations. Instead, she found a presentation-ready document that was more thorough than anything she had seen from employees with years of experience. This is comprehensive, Monica said, flipping through the pages with growing surprise. How did you identify these billing issues? And where did this market research data come from? I cross-referenced the account files with public business filings and industry reports, Sarah explained. The billing discrepancies became apparent when I created a timeline of all account activities. The market research came from combining several sources that were mentioned in old client emails but never followed up on. Monica stared at the document, realizing that Sarah had done the kind of deep analytical work that typically required a team of experienced professionals. The insights were sophisticated, the recommendations were practical, and the presentation was flawless. I'll need to review this more carefully, Monica said, clearly struggling to process what she was seeing. Mr. Henderson will want to see it before the Monday meeting. As Monica walked away with the report, Sarah began cleaning up her workspace. She noticed her colleagues watching with curious expressions, trying to interpret Monica's obvious surprise and confusion. The gossip network would be working overtime this weekend, trying to figure out what had happened. Jake Morrison approached her desk as she was packing up. So, how did the impossible project go? He asked with a smirk. Did you at least get something together that won't embarrass the company? Sarah looked at him calmly. I completed the assignment as requested, she said simply. Right, Jake laughed. Well, don't feel bad if it doesn't work out. That account has been a problem for months. Even experienced people have struggled with it. As Sarah drove home that evening, she reflected on the week's events. She had just completed the kind of complex analytical work that her military intelligence training had prepared her for, but her colleagues still saw her as someone struggling with basic tasks. The disconnect between perception and reality was striking, but not unusual in her experience. Her weekend was spent in the same disciplined routine she had maintained since leaving the military. Early morning runs through the city, grocery shopping at budget-friendly stores, and quiet evenings reading and staying current with industry publications. She lived simply, but her simplicity was a choice based on years of learning to find satisfaction in personal excellence rather than external validation. Monday morning brought a different energy to the office. Word had apparently spread that something significant had happened with the Blackstone account, though the details remained unclear. Sarah noticed more glances in her direction, but the expressions were confused rather than dismissive. Monica appeared at her desk looking uncharacteristically nervous. Mr. Henderson wants to see you in his office, she said. He's reviewed your report on the Blackstone account. The walk to Henderson's corner office felt longer than it actually was, with colleagues watching Sarah's progress through the hallways. Some probably expected her to emerge with her belongings in a box, finally, proven inadequate for the company's standards. Henderson's office was impressive, with windows overlooking the city and walls lined with awards and photos from the company's most successful campaigns. The man himself sat behind a massive desk, Sarah's report open in front of him alongside several other documents. "Please, sit down," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "I've had a chance to review your analysis of the Blackstone account, and I have some questions." Sarah sat calmly, prepared for whatever direction the conversation might take. "Where did you learn to conduct this level of business analysis?" Henderson asked directly. "This report identifies problems and opportunities that experienced consultants missed. The strategic recommendations are sophisticated, and your market research is thorough. This isn't the work of someone with limited experience." For a moment, Sarah considered how much to reveal. Her military background had taught her the value of operational security, but she also recognized that her current situation might require more transparency than she had initially planned. "I have experience with complex analytical work," she said carefully. "My previous positions required detailed research, strategic planning, and working under pressure with incomplete information." Henderson leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. "Ms. Martinez, I've been in this business for 30 years. I know the difference between natural talent and trained expertise. Whatever your background is, it's given you skills that most marketing professionals never develop." The conversation was interrupted by Henderson's assistant announcing that the Blackstone clients had arrived for their meeting. As Sarah stood to leave, Henderson made a decision that would change everything. "I want you in this meeting," he said firmly. "You understand this account better than anyone else right now, and I suspect our clients will be impressed by your insights." Sarah nodded calmly, but inside she recognized that this moment represented a significant shift. Her carefully maintained cover of modest anonymity was about to be tested in a way that would reveal at least some of her true capabilities to the people who had spent weeks underestimating her. As they walked toward the conference room, Sarah could see her colleagues' shocked expressions through the glass partitions. The quiet woman from the corner cubicle was about to sit in on a major client meeting with the company president. Their assumptions about her status and capabilities were about to face their first serious challenge. But this was only the beginning. Sarah knew that once she started demonstrating her real abilities, there would be no going back to the comfortable anonymity she had maintained. The skills that had made her exceptional in special operations were about to emerge in a corporate environment that had no idea what kind of person they had been dismissing. The meeting room doors closed behind them, and Sarah prepared to take the first step toward revealing who she really was. The Blackstone Industries meeting had been a turning point that nobody in the office could ignore. Sarah's presentation had not only impressed the clients but had secured a contract extension worth more than twice the original account value. Word of her success spread through Henderson and Associates like wildfire, but, instead of respect, it generated confusion, resentment, and a growing determination among her colleagues to prove that her success was somehow a fluke. Jake Morrison was particularly bothered by the sudden shift in Sarah's status. During the weeks following the Blackstone triumph, he watched with growing irritation as Mr. Henderson began consulting with Sarah on other challenging accounts. The woman who was supposed to be struggling with basic tasks was instead being treated like a valuable strategic asset. "I don't buy it," Jake complained to his usual circle during their morning coffee gathering. "Nobody goes from filing clerk to strategic consultant overnight. She probably just got lucky with some obvious insights that everyone else missed because they were too busy with real work." Amanda Walsh nodded enthusiastically. "Something doesn't add up. I mean, look at her. She drives that beat-up Honda, wears the same 3 outfits on rotation, and lives in some tiny apartment across town. If she was really as talented as Henderson thinks, wouldn't she have been more successful before coming here?" Their speculation was interrupted by Monica Chen, who had been unusually quiet since the Blackstone meeting. As Sarah's direct supervisor, Monica was struggling to reconcile the exceptional work she had witnessed with her initial assessment of the new employee. "Maybe we're missing something about her background," Monica said thoughtfully. Henderson doesn't impress easily, and he's been asking her opinions on accounts that seasoned professionals handle. Oh please, Jake scoffed. She probably exaggerated her resume and got lucky on one project. Watch, she'll crash and burn on the next assignment, and then everyone will see what we've been saying all along. Jake's prediction seemed to have a chance of coming true when Henderson assigned Sarah to handle the troubled Patterson manufacturing account. Patterson was a mid-sized industrial company that had been hemorrhaging money on ineffective marketing campaigns for 6 months. 3 different account teams had failed to turn the situation around, and the client was threatening to terminate their relationship with Henderson and Associates entirely. This could be her downfall, Jake whispered to Amanda as they watched Sarah receive the assignment. Patterson is impossible to please. They've rejected every strategy we've proposed, and they're ready to fire us. No way someone with her limited experience can succeed where experienced teams have failed. Sarah accepted the Patterson assignment with the same calm composure she had shown since her first day. But, this time, instead of working in isolation, she found herself under intense scrutiny from colleagues who were eager to witness her failure. They watched her late-night work sessions with anticipation, convinced that her previous success had been an anomaly that wouldn't be repeated. What her colleagues didn't realize was that the Patterson situation was exactly the kind of complex, high-stakes challenge that Sarah's military training had prepared her to handle. The client wasn't just unhappy with marketing strategies, they were struggling with fundamental business challenges that previous account teams had failed to identify. Sarah spent her first week on the account doing something that nobody expected. Instead of immediately proposing new marketing campaigns, she requested permission to visit Patterson's manufacturing facilities and interview their employees, customers, and suppliers. Henderson approved the unusual approach, curious to see what insights she might uncover. The trip to Patterson's facilities revealed what marketing consultants had missed entirely. The company's problems weren't related to advertising or brand positioning. They were dealing with serious operational inefficiencies, supply chain disruptions, and employee morale issues that no amount of marketing could overcome. Their previous marketing efforts had failed because they were trying to promote a company that was fundamentally broken at the operational level. Sarah's approach to the Patterson situation drew on skills she had developed during reconnaissance missions and intelligence-gathering operations. She knew how to observe situations without revealing her intentions, how to ask questions that revealed important information, and how to identify the real problems hiding beneath surface symptoms. Her findings resulted in a comprehensive report that went far beyond marketing recommendations. She identified specific operational improvements that could reduce costs by 30%, suggested supply chain modifications that would improve delivery times, and recommended employee engagement strategies that could dramatically improve productivity. When Sarah presented her findings to the Patterson executives, their reaction was immediate and profound. They had been expecting another marketing presentation filled with creative slogans and advertising concepts. Instead, they received a detailed operational analysis that addressed the root causes of their business struggles. "Ms. Martinez," said David Patterson, the company's CEO, "this is the most insightful business analysis we've received in years. How did you identify these operational issues that our own consultants missed?" Sarah's response was measured and professional, but it revealed just enough of her analytical capabilities to surprise everyone in the room. "I believe in understanding the complete operational picture before developing any strategic recommendations. Marketing campaigns can't succeed if the underlying business foundations aren't solid." The Patterson presentation was scheduled to include several colleagues from Henderson and Associates, including Jake Morrison, who had specifically requested to attend in hopes of witnessing Sarah's anticipated failure. Instead, he found himself watching her deliver the kind of sophisticated business analysis that he couldn't have produced with a team of consultants and unlimited time. As Sarah walked through her findings and recommendations, Jake's confidence began to crumble. This wasn't lucky guesswork or beginner's luck. Sarah was demonstrating a level of analytical sophistication and strategic thinking that indicated years of advanced training and experience in complex problem solving. The meeting concluded with Patterson agreeing not only to continue their relationship with Henderson and Associates but to expand their contract to include the operational consulting services that Sarah had outlined. It was the kind of success that transformed a failing account into one of the agency's most valuable relationships. Back at the office, word of Sarah's latest triumph spread quickly, but this time the reaction was different. Instead of dismissive speculation about luck or exaggeration, her colleagues began asking more serious questions about who she really was and where she had come from. Monica cornered Sarah privately after the Patterson success. "Sarah, I need to ask you directly. What exactly was your previous job experience? The work you're doing requires skills that take years to develop, and your background check just listed government employment with minimal details." Sarah had been expecting this conversation. Her string of successes had made it impossible to maintain the impression of limited experience that had protected her anonymity. But she still wasn't ready to reveal the full truth about her military service. "I worked in government consulting for several years," she said carefully. "The positions required analytical work, strategic planning, and problem-solving under pressure. Many of the skills transfer well to business consulting." Monica studied her expression, clearly sensing that there was more to the story. "Government consulting in what area? Defense contracting? Policy analysis? Your abilities suggest specialized training that goes beyond typical administrative work." Before Sarah could respond, their conversation was interrupted by Henderson's assistant requesting Sarah's presence in the executive conference room. As she walked toward the meeting, Sarah noticed her colleagues watching with expressions that had evolved from dismissive amusement to genuine curiosity and growing concern. The conference room contained Henderson and two men in expensive suits who introduced themselves as representatives from Morrison Industries, one of the largest potential clients the agency had ever pursued. They had heard about Sarah's work with Patterson Manufacturing and wanted to discuss a possible consulting arrangement. "Ms. Martinez," said the lead representative, "we've been struggling with operational challenges similar to what you identified at Patterson. Our company is much larger and more complex, but we're interested in your analytical approach to business problem solving." As Sarah listened to their description of Morrison Industries' challenges, she realized that this opportunity would require her to demonstrate capabilities that would be difficult to explain without revealing more about her background. The project involved international operations, security considerations, and strategic planning on a scale that few civilian consultants ever encountered. But Morrison Industries represented exactly the kind of high-stakes, complex challenge that Sarah's military experience had prepared her to handle. The skills she had developed during special operations missions were perfectly suited to the kind of strategic analysis and problem-solving that the client needed. Henderson watched the interaction carefully, noting how Sarah asked sophisticated questions about international regulations, supply chain security, and operational coordination across multiple time zones. Her questions revealed a depth of knowledge about complex global operations that seemed inconsistent with typical government consulting experience. As the meeting concluded with Morrison Industries requesting a formal proposal, Henderson made a decision that would force Sarah's hand. "Ms. Martinez will be the lead consultant on this project," he announced. "She'll have full authority to conduct whatever analysis and develop whatever recommendations she feels are necessary." Walking back to her desk after the meeting, Sarah realized that her careful cover was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. The Morrison Industries project would require her to demonstrate capabilities that would inevitably raise serious questions about her background. Her colleagues were already speculating about her true experience, and a project of this magnitude would make it impossible to hide the sophisticated skills she had developed during 12 years of military service. Jake Morrison intercepted her in the hallway, his expression no longer mocking but genuinely confused and concerned. "Sarah, I need to ask you something directly. Where did you really work before coming here? The things you're doing, the way you analyze complex situations, the questions you ask, it's not normal government consulting work." Sarah looked at Jake calmly, recognizing that this moment represented another step toward the inevitable revelation of her true background. Her colleagues had spent weeks underestimating and mocking her, confident in their assumptions about her limited capabilities. But her continued success was forcing them to confront the possibility that their initial judgments had been completely wrong. "My previous work was more specialized than I initially indicated," she said simply. "Specialized how?" Jake pressed. What kind of government work prepares someone to handle the level of strategic analysis you're doing? And why are you working here instead of using those skills somewhere that pays better and recognizes your abilities? Before Sarah could respond, Amanda Walsh joined the conversation, drawn by her curiosity about the growing mystery surrounding their quiet colleague. "Jake's right," she said. "Something doesn't add up. You're obviously overqualified for this position, but you're also living like someone who's never had a successful career. What's your real story?" Sarah found herself surrounded by colleagues who were no longer content with dismissive assumptions. Her success had forced them to recognize that they had fundamentally misjudged her capabilities, and they wanted answers that she wasn't ready to provide. The Morrison Industries project would make it impossible to continue hiding her true background. The skills required for that level of strategic consulting were too specialized to explain without revealing the military training that had developed them. Her colleagues' questions were becoming more direct and more persistent. But Sarah also recognized that her situation at Henderson and Associates had fundamentally changed. She was no longer the dismissed newcomer struggling with basic tasks. Her success had earned her the respect and attention of senior management, and her colleagues' attitudes were shifting from condescension to curiosity and concern. The revelation of her true background was becoming inevitable. The question was no longer whether her military service would be discovered, but how and when she would choose to reveal the 12 years of Navy SEAL experience that had shaped every aspect of her professional capabilities. As she returned to her desk to begin work on the Morrison Industries proposal, Sarah realized that her carefully constructed civilian facade was about to face its most serious test. The project ahead would require her to demonstrate skills that could only be explained by revealing the extraordinary military career that her colleagues couldn't have imagined when they first dismissed her as an underqualified newcomer struggling with simple tasks. The Morrison Industries project had been progressing for 2 weeks when everything changed in a single, unexpected moment. Sarah was deep into her analysis of the company's international security protocols when her phone rang with a call that would shatter her carefully maintained civilian facade forever. "Sarah Martinez?" The voice was official, urgent, and unmistakably military. "Speaking," Sarah replied, instinctively stepping away from her colleagues who were working nearby. "This is Commander Patricia Reynolds, Navy Special Operations. We have a situation that requires your immediate consultation. There's been a security breach involving former SEAL operations, and your expertise with the affected missions makes you essential to the response team." Sarah felt her civilian world collide with her military past in a way she had never anticipated. "Commander, I'm no longer active duty. I've been out for over a year. We understand your status, Martinez. But this situation involves operations you led during your final deployment. We need someone who understands the tactical details and potential security implications. This is a matter of national security." The conversation continued in low tones, but Sarah was acutely aware that her colleagues were watching with growing curiosity. Jake Morrison had stopped pretending to work and was openly staring at her increasingly serious expression and the military posture that had unconsciously replaced her careful civilian demeanor. "I'll need to make arrangements with my current employer," Sarah said finally. "How long do you anticipate needing my consultation?" "Minimum 72 hours, possibly longer." "And, Martinez? Thank you for your continued service." As Sarah ended the call, she found herself surrounded by colleagues whose expressions ranged from confusion to shock. The fragments of conversation they had overheard, combined with her obvious familiarity with military protocol, had raised questions that she could no longer deflect. Monica Chan was the first to speak. "Sarah, was that conversation what I think it was?" Before Sarah could respond, Henderson's assistant appeared with an urgent request for her immediate presence in the executive conference room. The timing felt like a confrontation she wasn't prepared for, but Sarah recognized that her situation had passed the point where careful evasion was possible. Henderson was waiting with the Morrison Industries representatives and 2 additional men who introduced themselves as federal security contractors. The presence of government personnel in what should have been a routine business meeting confirmed Sarah's growing realization that her past had caught up with her in the most public way possible. "Ms. Martinez," said one of the federal contractors, we understand you've been contacted about a security consultation. We're here because the same situation affects our work with Morrison Industries. Their international operations overlap with some sensitive areas that require someone with your specific background knowledge." Henderson listened to this exchange with growing amazement. The woman he had hired as a junior employee was apparently being consulted by federal security contractors on matters of national importance. The disconnect between her civilian role and obvious government connections demanded an explanation. "Sarah," Henderson said carefully, "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about your background. The level of work you've been doing, the skills you've demonstrated, and, now this, what exactly was your previous employment?" Sarah looked around the room at the expectant faces and realized that her carefully constructed civilian identity was about to collapse entirely. The phone call had been overheard by half the office, federal contractors were discussing her specialized knowledge, and her colleagues were demanding answers she could no longer avoid giving. "My previous position was with Navy Special Operations," she said quietly. "I served as a Navy SEAL for 12 years before transitioning to civilian employment." The silence in the room was profound. Henderson stared at her with an expression of complete shock, while the Morrison Industries representatives exchanged glances that suggested they were reassessing everything they thought they knew about their consultant. "Navy SEAL?" Henderson repeated slowly. "You're telling me that the woman I hired for data entry work is a former Special Operations soldier?" "Yes, sir," Sarah replied, unconsciously falling back into military formality. "I served in multiple deployments including counterterrorism operations, strategic reconnaissance, and specialized mission planning. I transitioned out of service 13 months ago and have been seeking civilian employment." The revelation recontextualized everything that had happened since her first day at Henderson and Associates. Her analytical capabilities, strategic thinking, ability to work under pressure, and sophisticated approach to complex problems suddenly made perfect sense. But it also raised obvious questions about why someone with her background was working in a junior marketing position. "Sarah," said one of the Morrison Industries representatives, "if you're a former Navy SEAL, why are you working here instead of in defense consulting or security contracting where your skills would be more appropriately utilized and compensated?" Sarah's answer revealed the personal struggle that had driven her career choices since leaving the military. "I wanted to build a completely civilian life. I was tired of the constant danger, the deployments, the inability to form normal relationships or live in one place for extended periods. I thought I could use my analytical skills in a peaceful environment and find satisfaction in regular business challenges." Henderson was still processing the implications of her revelation. "Sarah, do you realize that you've been solving business problems using strategic analysis skills developed for military operations? No wonder your work has been so sophisticated. You've been applying counterterrorism planning techniques to marketing challenges." The federal contractors exchanged meaningful glances before one of them addressed the room. "We need to discuss the current security situation that requires Ms. Martinez's consultation. But, given her employment here, we may be able to structure this as a consulting arrangement that benefits everyone involved." As the meeting continued, word of Sarah's military background spread through the office with unprecedented speed. Colleagues who had spent weeks dismissing her as an underqualified newcomer were struggling to reconcile their assumptions with the reality of her extraordinary service record. Jake Morrison found himself in the particularly uncomfortable position of realizing that his jokes about physical fitness and mental toughness had been directed at someone whose capabilities in both areas far exceeded anything he could imagine. The quiet woman he had mocked for driving an old car and wearing simple clothes had actually been one of the most elite soldiers in the world. Amanda Walsh was equally stunned as she remembered her comments about Sarah's modest lifestyle and apparent lack of success. The realization that Sarah had chosen simplicity over the lucrative opportunities available to someone with her background forced a complete re-evaluation of her character and priorities. Monica Chen felt particularly conflicted as she recalled assigning Sarah basic filing work while questioning her ability to handle simple tasks. The woman she had patronized and underestimated had been capable of planning and executing operations that most people couldn't even comprehend. When Sarah returned from the extended meeting, she found her colleagues waiting with expressions that ranged from embarrassment to admiration to genuine curiosity. The dynamics of the office had shifted completely in the space of a few hours. "Sarah," Jake said, approaching her with obvious discomfort, "I owe you an apology." "Actually, I owe you several apologies. The things I said, the assumptions I made. I had no idea who you really were." "You weren't supposed to know," Sarah replied gently. "I wanted to leave that life behind and start fresh. I didn't expect my past to catch up with me here." Amanda joined the conversation with her own expression of regret. "I feel terrible about the things I said about your clothes and your car and your lifestyle. I completely misunderstood what I was seeing." Sarah's response revealed the thoughtfulness that had guided her transition to civilian life. "I chose this lifestyle deliberately. After 12 years of deployments and constant danger, I wanted simplicity and peace. The car is reliable, the clothes are practical, and the apartment is quiet. Those things matter more to me than impressing people with expensive possessions." Monica approached with the most difficult apology. "Sarah, I assigned you work that was completely beneath your capabilities. I treated you like someone who needed to prove basic competency when you were overqualified for my position, let alone yours. The work you gave me taught me about this business," Sarah replied. "I needed to understand the industry from the ground up. Basic tasks can reveal important information if you approach them with the right analytical framework." Henderson emerged from his office having spent time processing the complete transformation of his understanding of Sarah's capabilities and potential. His approach to her had shifted from supervisor to someone seeking counsel from a recognized expert. "Sarah, we need to discuss your future here. Your military background explains everything about your exceptional performance, but it also raises questions about how we can better utilize your capabilities. You're obviously overqualified for your current position, and undercompensated for the level of work you've been producing." Sarah's response reflected the personal journey that had brought her to this moment. "Mr. Henderson, I took this position because I wanted to prove I could succeed in a normal civilian environment. I wanted to build something peaceful and stable. But I'm learning that trying to hide from my past might not be the best approach to building my future." The federal security consultation had evolved into a week-long project that required Sarah to work closely with government contractors while maintaining her role at Henderson and Associates. The arrangement gave her colleagues an opportunity to observe her interacting with federal personnel as an equal, further cementing their new understanding of her background and capabilities. During this period, Sarah's true personality began to emerge more fully. Without the need to maintain her carefully constructed facade, she became more confident in expressing her opinions, more willing to take leadership roles, and more comfortable demonstrating the natural authority that had made her successful in military command positions. The transformation was particularly evident during a staff meeting where Henderson asked for input on a challenging client situation. Instead of remaining quiet as she had during her first weeks, Sarah provided a detailed strategic analysis that drew on lessons learned during counter-terrorism operations, albeit adapted for business applications. "The client's resistance to our recommendations suggests they don't trust our understanding of their core challenges," she explained. "In situations like this, you need to demonstrate competency in their primary concerns before they'll consider your secondary suggestions. It's about building credibility through specific expertise, not general marketing concepts." Her colleagues listened with new respect, recognizing that they were receiving insights from someone whose strategic thinking had been tested in life-and-death situations. The advice was sophisticated, practical, and delivered with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to making important decisions under pressure. As the week progressed, the office culture began shifting to accommodate Sarah's revealed identity. Colleagues who had excluded her from social activities began inviting her to join lunch conversations, though they were initially uncertain how to interact with someone whose experiences were so far outside their normal reference points. Sarah navigated these social adjustments with the same patience she had shown during her initial weeks of dismissive treatment. She understood that her colleagues needed time to process their misconceptions and adjust their behavior accordingly. The Morrison Industries project concluded successfully, with Sarah's analysis providing insights that saved the company millions in potential security breaches and operational inefficiencies. Her work had been so impressive that federal contractors offered her a position with a salary that dwarfed anything available in civilian marketing. But Sarah's response surprised everyone who had assumed she would eagerly return to work that matched her military background. "I appreciate the offer," she told the federal representatives, "but I've decided that my future lies in finding ways to apply my skills in civilian contexts. I want to help businesses solve problems and achieve success without the life and death stakes that defined my previous career." Henderson seized the opportunity to restructure Sarah's role at the agency, promoting her to senior strategic consultant with a salary and responsibilities that reflected her true capabilities. The position would allow her to work on the most challenging accounts while mentoring other employees in advanced analytical techniques. Sarah, Henderson said during her promotion announcement, "Your unique background gives this agency capabilities that our competitors can't match. But, more importantly, your choice to apply military-level strategic thinking to civilian business challenges represents exactly the kind of innovation that will define our future success." The announcement was made to the entire staff, with Henderson using the opportunity to address the lessons learned from Sarah's experience. "This situation has taught us all about the danger of making assumptions based on appearances. Sarah's success reminds us that exceptional capabilities can come in unexpected packages, and that our job is to recognize and develop talent wherever we find it." Jake Morrison stood up during the announcement to make a public apology. "I want to acknowledge that I completely misjudged Sarah when she first arrived. My comments and assumptions were wrong, unfair, and based on superficial impressions rather than actual performance. Sarah's success has taught me to be more thoughtful about how I evaluate my colleagues." His apology was echoed by several other colleagues who recognized their own roles in the initial treatment that Sarah had received. The collective acknowledgement represented a significant moment of growth for the office culture. 6 months later, Sarah had established herself as one of Henderson and Associates' most valuable assets. Her unique combination of military strategic training and business acumen had attracted high-profile clients who specifically requested her involvement in their projects. But, perhaps more importantly, she had found a way to honor her military service while building the peaceful civilian life she had sought. Her work allowed her to continue solving complex problems and helping people achieve their goals, but without the constant danger and personal sacrifice that had defined her years as a Navy SEAL. Her modest lifestyle remained largely unchanged, though she did eventually buy a reliable new car and move to a slightly larger apartment. The simplicity that her colleagues had once mistaken for lack of success had revealed itself as a deliberate choice based on hard-won wisdom about what actually mattered in life. Sarah's story had become a powerful reminder that true strength often comes disguised as quiet competence, and that the most extraordinary people are sometimes those who choose to hide their capabilities until circumstances require them to step forward. The woman who had once been mocked for her simple clothes and old car had proven that respect must be earned through demonstrated capability, not demanded through appearances or assumptions. Her journey from dismissed newcomer to respected leader had transformed not only her own career but the culture of an entire organization that learned to look beyond surface impressions to recognize the true potential in everyone they encountered.